Hello and welcome back to my craft room. Well, it's the 20th of November. The second Great Big Little Stitchery swap is well underway. The deadline to post your squares of Stitchery off to your swapsters is the 31st of December. If you've got no idea what I'm talking about, I'll put the kind of guidelines about the Great Big Little Stitchery swap in the description box, along with a link to the Great Big Little Stitchery swap playlist so you can find out what it's all about. I won't go into that now. My idea for today was just to share some ideas for how to get started if you've found your swapsters and you're ready to start your squares, but you can't quite get going, or you just want a few ideas. So we've got an optional theme this time, which is my favourite, which could be anything. It could be your favourite colour, stitch, fabrics, technique, or you're inspired by your favourite place or cake or animal or person or book, whatever you like, or you can just totally ignore the theme altogether. I started off thinking I was maybe going to feature cats because it's one of my favourite animals, and then I put together a whole lot of my favourite colours and I thought of a few of my favourite techniques that I'd like to try, and I just kind of got stuck in and started stitching, and the theme has kind of gone by the way a little bit, but the theme is just there to get you started if you just need a bit of a prompt. Some people enjoy having a prompt, some people would rather do their own thing. It's totally up to you. And remember, you can actually use machine stitching if you do free motion embroidery on your machine or machine quilting. You're very welcome to join in that way as well. It doesn't have to be hand stitching. Last time it was all hand slow stitching, and that's what I enjoy doing, but if you enjoy machine stitching, then that's absolutely fine as well. I'll put my link tree in the description box, and there's links to lots of useful places in there if you're joining in with the swap. The two most important probably being our free Discord community. There's a Stitchery swap room in there, and the Arty Farty Annie group on Facebook. Those are the places you need to go to find your swapsters, which is what I call the people you're going to exchange squares with. So you need to go to either or both of those places and find your swapsters and decide how many squares you're going to make, and then you're ready to go. I won't go on now about how the swap works and everything because I've done that before in previous videos, and the guidelines will be in the description box. If you've got any questions at all, just do ask in a comment, or if you go to Discord or Facebook groups, just ask questions in there. Someone will always help you out. We're a very friendly bunch. I had quite a few different ideas. One great place to start with if you want some inspiration is to go and have a look at the online gallery that I put together, featuring all the squares from the first Great Big Little Stitchery swap. Well, all the ones I could find anyway. Now, if you go in there and your squares aren't there, or if you can see any other errors or omissions, so if you see a name spelt wrong, or a square allocated to the wrong person or attributed to the wrong person, or you can see I've put someone in country unspecified and you know they're from the UK, say, just let me know. Also, in that link tree that you'll find in the description box, you'll find my email. You can contact me there, put gallery in the subject box, and let me know what needs adding or amending. Also, if you want your squares from this time around to be included in the next gallery, you need to email me your pictures. That's how I'm going to pick them up this time. I'm not going to trawl through all the different social media platforms this time because it was a bit too much of a bit of a mammoth task last time. So if you would like your squares included in the gallery, take the best possible pictures in the best natural light you can find of your squares. Just the square, the whole square, and nothing but the square. Get your head over it and look straight on so you get it nice and straight on in the picture. And the best possible natural light. It's worth doing that. You've spent all that time making those squares, you might as well do them justice and get the best photo you can for the gallery. Attach the photos to an email for me. You'll need the photo. You need to let me know what name you want displayed in the gallery. Some people don't want their whole name, or some people want their social media name. It's up to you. Whatever name you want displayed in the gallery, let me know. And also, if you want a link to anywhere else, if you want a link to your Instagram or your YouTube channel or whatever it might be, only one link per square. It won't allow me to do more than one link. Having said all that, let's go and have a peek at the gallery because it's so inspiring. I was so it was a labour of love, but it was so worth doing. So here's the Stitchery swap gallery, and you can see I've organised it into different countries. So this is the country where the square was made, not where it was sent to. So we've got UK, Canada, USA, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, the rest of the world. Country unspecified is where I didn't know where the maker was. If you see your square in there or your friend's squares in there and you know where what country they're in, let me know and I'll move them over. So if we click on, say we click on the UK here, click on that, it'll take a second or two to load. There's a lot of pictures in here and you can see all the squares are pictured here along with the name of the person who made them. So if we click on, say, Claire's here, if you hover over the square and the cursor doesn't change, there's no link there. But if you hover over and it turns into a hand like that, you know there's a link, click on it and it will go to whatever link I've got for that person. So in this case, this was Claire96 Bell, if you know her from Discord. And this is her Instagram page. Wow, look at those pansies. Love that. So if you click on the links, you can go and see that person's creations on whatever social media platform. If let's find someone. Well, here's Tori. Here's one of Tori's. So if I click on there, this will go straight to her YouTube channel, which you probably already know if you're watching this video, I expect. I won't look at them all now. You can enjoy having a look at them in your own time. So that's one really good place to go for inspiration. Another place I'd be looking for inspiration is in the beautiful squares I got in the last swap. Let me give you a quick peek at just some of them. So this is the first volume of my Treasury of Stitchery swaps. I did do a video about this as well, so if I remember I'll link to that, but you'll find it in the Slow Stitchery playlist, which I'm going to link to anyway. So yeah, so I did this bit of embroidery and then I've been putting the squares onto individual pages and then just embroidering little extra bits to reflect the design of the square. I won't go through all them now because I've done that in a previous video, but yeah, this is just, it's so inspiring to go through and look at other people's work and what they've done, how they've used stitches and put colours together and some of the design ideas and things. I've definitely pinched some of the things I've been inspired by in the squares that are sent to me, and those will be reflected in the squares I'm making myself for this time around. So the squares we're making for the swap are 10 centimetres or 4 inches plus a 1 centimetre seam allowance, and you need to do that to allow for the fact that some people like to stitch them all together into a quilt or mount them onto something, and so you need that little bit of allowance. You don't need to finish the edges and you don't need to worry about the back. In fact, I really like to see the messy back sides. I've actually put my squares in the book. If you have a look here again, just sewn at the top so that I can still flip up and have a look at the back, because I do love those messy back sides. As you'll know if you've watched any of my opening videos. So yeah, 4 inches with just a kind of, or 3/8 of an inch. It's not precise. Just make sure it's a generous enough seam allowance. So what the first thing I do is go through and tear off loads of strips. I use this calico, cheap calico that I just bought a whole lot of. But you could use an old pillowcase, sheeting, whatever you've got really as your base. I tore off 12 centimetre strips and then tore that into 12 centimetre squares, and I just penciled around my 10 centimetre area that I'm going to stitch into. And then because this is quite thin, some people use felt on the back. I happen to have a whole lot of this stuff which I got in a free fabric bundle. I don't even know what it's called. It's some sort of synthetic. It's like that diagonal kind of quite close diagonal weave. I've just forgotten what it's called. It's quite a robust fabric and it's got a little bit of substance to it. So I just cut a slightly smaller square of that and put on the back, just to give it a bit more. It just makes it feel nicer, and it's just nicer to stitch into, and it's got a bit more substance. And this is so thin it's almost see-through, you can see there. There's different ideas you could do. One idea that I really love is the old Scrappy string squares. Now these beautiful pieces were amongst a batch of gorgeousness that was sent to me by Christine Preston, and I don't know if she was I can't remember now if she said or not, if she was inspired by my Scrappy string squares project, but I will link to that as well, where I show how to make these little squares made of the tiniest scraps of fabric and trims that you just place diagonally on a base piece. So, you know, in this case it would be this stuff. And just kind of use basting stitches to quickly kind of place them as you want them, and then go in with various decorative stitches. Now you could just use loads and loads of just straight stitching. I love just straight, like canter stitching or sashiko stitching, you know, just straight running stitch. You could just do that, but it's also a great opportunity to try lots and lots of different stitches, which is what Christine's done here. You know, I mean, you could sort your little scraps into rainbow order, or just into separate colours and do one that's all purple or one that's all pink or whatever, or just as it comes, just be completely random with it. It's not difficult to do. It's really absorbing, and it just looks amazing at the end. I will link to that Scrappy String Squares video series in case you want to check that out. So that's one idea. Another thing that I love to do, now Pat Havill in Australia, she sent me 3 squares, and one of them was this, which I thought was a fabulous idea, and I'm going to be doing some of these. So this is like a mini. What a neat backside Pat has, look at that. Prize for the tidiest backside Pat. So this is like a mini Kawandi, and I love doing Kawandi work anyway, and I just thought it was amazing that she even included the fuller, these little corner triangles. She included them separately for me to stitch on if I wanted to, and I just thought that's fabulous. So I am definitely going to be doing something like this. Probably what I'll do is keep the as Pat has done, I'll keep the edges of the Kawandi within that border, and I'll enclose the fuller inside as I'm stitching them on, which of course I wasn't able to do here. I just tacked them on afterwards. So I will also link to my Kawandi playlist. So there's lots of playlists I'm going to be linking. There doesn't seem to be any point in me showing it now when I've already done it in a previous video series, so I'll do that just in case you would like to have a look at that. So Kawandi is definitely, I'm going to be doing some Kawandi, I'm going to be doing some Scrappy String Squares. So I suppose I am doing my favourite. I'm just doing my favourite techniques, and I'm using a lot of my favourite colours and my favourite hoarded bits and bobs. Another thing, a more recent discovery, I've known about it for ages. First time I tried it really, and I've done it here on this on the cover of this book, is this crazy patchwork, this Victorian, I think it goes back to Victorian days, this crazy patchwork thing where you just put odd misshaped scraps of fabric on, all kind of higgledy-piggledy, and then you stitch around them when they're on. Add lots of decorative stitching and bits and pieces to them. I incorporated some of the lovely pieces that Pat included. I think the heart came from Pat. Yep, this whole piece was that I stitched on here, including that, was from Pat, and that, and that. So it's a lovely way to include those little pieces. I've started to put some together here. So what I've done, this is the stage where I've just tacked them on. Just tacked on random pieces, whatever shape and size they are, not necessarily square. They could be all odd pieces. So when you save the tiddliest little bits, you can still use it with this. So at this stage, I've just gone through and tacked a whole lot on, and then I can sit there in the evening with my threads and things all around me and just start adding decorative stitching to these. Now where is here? This is what I take down in the evenings. My rat's nest of threads, and then sequins and things in there as well. That'll get messier and messier and messier as the project goes on, and then it'll all get sorted at the end. Once I've done the decorative stitching into them, here's some I've already done a bit more work on. I will tend to do it in stages. I'll lay a whole load out, then I'll tack a whole load together, then I'll start adding decorative stitches, then I'll go back in and add some buttons and things to all of them. So there are a few that I've started to work on. Again, you know, it's like my favourite colour combinations. One of my favourite motifs is little cars and caravans and things. I love that kind of thing. So one of my favourite flowers is a daisy, and all of my favourite stitches are in here. So I'm kind of following along with the theme, but going my own sweet way a little bit as well. So I just like added some seed stitching in there, blanket stitching, French knots. You can do the whole thing with nothing but straight stitches, you know, keep it simple. I love a whole lot of, so if I go back again to show you an example in here, here we go. These are fairly simple in that they're just pieces of fabric with straight stitching on, but it's that combination of the fabrics and that beautiful, that lovely straight stitching. You can see how much stitching was done there, and here it's been done with kind of rainbow threads. And there are some other stitches as well, but it's mainly just variations on a straight stitch, so it doesn't have to be fancy. You don't need to be able to do fancy clever embroidery stitches to join in with this. So that was the Victorian patchwork idea. And then just recently you might have seen, again I will link to this video, I have to remember all these links at the end, aren't I? This is where I've been experimenting with Crayola crayons and just doing some rubbings on. I used some texture plates that I happen to have, but I've been seeing it all over the house ever since I did that video. Everywhere I look I can see bits of texture I can pick up. I mean, just looking here, even there's a little bit of texture there. Yeah, it's all around you once you start looking, definitely in the kitchen. So I just used texture plates because I had a whole lot of them, and some embossing folders. You could also use stencils, red rubber stamps would work. I want to try die cutting some letters and see if I can put some letters on these with the rubbing method. So I basically rubbed with the crayons, and then I sandwiched the fabric, did it in one long strip between layers of paper towel, sheets of paper towel, and gave it a good iron with a hot iron to take out the wax but leave the colour behind. And then I could start stitching into the patterns that I'd created. So just to give you a little peek at how those have turned out, the ones I've done so far, this is the kind of thing I've been doing. So it's really fun. It's got all of my favourite colours in there. So all of my favourite stitches, a bit of sparkle. It's got some of my daisies. It's got lots of texture, which I love, which doesn't really come across too well on the camera, but there's lots of texture here. They weren't quick to do. You can see how much stitching is on the back, but my goodness, I didn't half enjoy doing it. Very, very relaxing, because the pattern is already there. You just pick up the colour that's there and the pattern that's there and stitch into it. And again, not very complicated stitches. These are mostly, there's a lot of back stitch which I've then whipped. There's some lazy daisy, my rough and ready satin stitch, that's all just running stitch, whipped back stitch again. There's some French knots and a little bit of Y stitch, fly stitch, whatever it's called. Nothing complicated at all. Oh, that's the fussiest bit. Is I tried doing one of these. I've forgotten what it's called. Hang on, I've forgotten what it's called. But you just make a kind of a star and then you weave in and out. So it's not difficult, but it's probably the most complicated thing there. And I just added some sequins for a bit of sparkle. Yeah, so that is another idea. And tell you what, doing this rubbing thing was absolutely addictive. Loved it. And then I think the last idea I was going to share with you today, I made these the other day. I had some of these, I've put them away now, pigment powders I was trying out of last month's Scrawler box, where you just sprinkle the powders on and then spritz them to activate the pigments, and they do all these amazing things. And I thought, well, while I've got a bit of spare fabric by my side, as well as using the paper pad that came in the Scrawler box, love that one, I will try it on fabric and see if it works. And it seems to have taken fine. It's left it feeling very slightly stiff, like when you get a cotton fabric that's got a finish on it, you know. That's what it feels like. I'm safe to assume that nobody's going to be washing these squares that I'm sending out, so I don't need to worry about if it's colour fast or not. I'm not going to give that too much thought. But the thing that I was going to show you with this, and I think again I have done a video about this before, you'll probably have heard of Neurographic art Well, I also like to do neurographic stitching in pretty much the same way. Now I'm going to need my little sheet of sandpaper to make things easier for me, bear with. So let's take this one. The sandpaper is just like a non-slip mat to stop the fabric moving around. So if I was, you know, trying to draw on this, it wouldn't work very well because it's slipping about. But if I do it on this, it doesn't. So that's all that is for. And then to do this neurographic stitching, I do it just the same way as I would start a neurographic art piece. I feel like I want that the other way up, I don't know why. It doesn't matter. So I'm just going to start a doodly line. I'm going to start at this side and end up coming out this side. And I'm not thinking about it too much at all at the moment. So the line looks a bit lost on camera there, but it is there, perfectly visible enough for me to work to. And then I think I'll do another one running the other way across. Still moves this, still have to hold it a little bit, but there we go. And then if this was neurographic art on paper, the next stage would be to, wherever these lines intersect, and normally if I'm doing this on paper I do it with a Sharpie pen or something quite bold so I don't get too finicky about it. The idea would be that you would round off all those little intersections so you end up with no, so I just nutted the camera, sorry for the wobble, you end up with no angles. You take away all of the angles. So with stitching, I could either do that by satin stitching, where I've done the pencil work there, or I think what I did last time was I just did like a kind of like a one cross stitch and then another cross stitch in the other direction, so it ended up like a star over each of the intersections wherever those angles are. And you do that, follow along these lines with a running stitch, fill in these, take off these angles, soften these angles, whichever way you like, with some other decorative stitch. I could think, right, okay, there's a bit too much of a space here, I want to fill that a bit, and I'm gonna just do another wiggly line across. Or another thing I like to do is to take a shape. Usually I will pick a circle because I love circles. Let's just find something circular that's handy. So now I've drawn that circle on, and now where that circle overlaps the lines, again I will soften off all of these angles so there are no angles left. And I think that's probably quite enough for me to work in. And then once I'm happy with my penciled drawing here, I'll just sort of take stock of it and think, okay, do I want to just add a bit of a line here? Do I want to put something there? No, I think it's nice to have some free space. I think maybe across here I'm not happy with that bit, so let's just do that. So my first step now is to just do a straight stitch wherever these lines are. So I'm going to stop recording now and do that a minute so you can just see. That's only taken me a few minutes. I've just done a running stitch, not a tacking stitch, a running stitch. Fairly small, but not ridiculously small, just in a black thread. What I'm going to do now, I will link to I definitely did a video of it, so I'll link to my video as well so you can see the finished piece. I wonder if I could find it now and just show you, mute myself there. You can see where I finished my initial bit of stitching there. I think I've done a straight stitch and then whipped it with the same colour, just with the black. And I'm going to use those kind of coordinating colours, and as you can see I'm indicating there, I'm just going to stitch along, kind of following those black lines, but just going off them just a little bit so they're a bit offset. So luckily I've still got a photo of the next stage of this, and it did go further as well, but I don't think I've got a more up-to-date photo handy. But yeah, so I've just used those coordinating colours there, and I've just done a plain stitch and a bit of couching there and a little bit of feather stitch, not feather stitch, fly stitch, just there, just to vary it up a bit. And it's really fun to do, and you can just fill in the shapes where you end up creating these spaces. You can just fill them in with little seed stitching, or put little beads, or dot some sequins around. It did occur to me that I could actually incorporate a bit of shisha embroidery, because that's another one of my favourite things to do. Some shisha embroidery with little mirrors or gems would look really nice on here. Another one of my current favourite obsessions is tatting. I've just learned to do it. Here's all my practice pieces. Here's the longest piece I've managed to make. Now I've really cracked it. I was very proud of this. But even these little scraps, my little practice scraps, you know, they could be incorporated into little bits of slow stitching and stitched down and stitched around. And you know, this leaf shape's quite nice, but I could work that in somewhere. Some of this would be nice in amongst the crazy patchwork idea as well. So that's a bit of a motley assortment, a bit of a little hodgepodge of ideas there, but that's how my head works. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that, or maybe got some ideas there. If you're joining in with the Great Big Little Stitchery swap, let me know in the comments, and what are you doing for your squares. If you've got any other ideas to share, please share them in the comments, or you know, in the group, in the Discord community. Thank you very much for joining me today. I will see you again really soon.